Hey guys, it's Chirpy, your favorite rogue, and in this video, we'll be going over the most common mistakes that you're making as an outlaw rogue that's holding you back from doing the most damage you can do. But let's get started. I've been doing a lot of coaching sessions, and I noticed the same problems amongst a lot of players. So I'm going to demonstrate what I see, and I want you to see if you can pick out what is wrong here. Were you able to catch it? The mistake that was made there was that you're not using Between the Eyes as your first opener, which is a massive oversight. You need to use Between the Eyes as your first opener, that way the rest of your abilities benefit from the 20% crit, so that's including auto attacks and everything else, and then also if you use it as your first ability, when you use your Slice and Dice as your second spender, you're recovering cooldown from Between the Eyes that you need for later. A lot of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, which is the absolute biggest mistake that you are making as an outlaw rogue. So be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment for more. I drop commentaries, guides, and everything else you need to be the best outlaw rogue possible. Be sure to follow the stream too at twitch.tv/chirpytv, link in the description below. I answer all questions there. You get live gameplay from Mythic Plus content to raid content and anything in between. Hope to see you guys there soon. Another huge mistake that I see people making when they're playing Outlaw is they're not using their Vanish and Shadow Dance properly. When you're cycling between these two cooldowns, you should be using Vanish first, Shadow Dance second, and then your Vanish will come back up shortly after. A lot of people just send Shadow Dance as their first ability right off the rip with Adrenaline Rush, and by doing that, you're limiting the amount of time that you're actually spending in your stealth bar. So I'll demonstrate the proper way of doing it right now. We have our Vanish, so we enter our stealth bar again. We're spamming ambushes for CTO. As soon as we don't have an ambush here, we're going to Shadow Dance. Right here, Shadow Dance. And as you can see, our Vanish is already almost off cooldown again. So we have our Vanish ready. We don't have to Sinister Strike a single time here. And our Adrenaline Rush is almost back up as well. So we had to Sinister Strike one time in between Adrenaline Rushes. Absolutely amazing. You need to practice this rotation of Vanish to Shadow Dance to Vanish. Otherwise, you're going to sit there Sinister Striking, wasting a lot of time, wasting a lot of damage, wasting a lot of energy, and you're not going to be able to do all the damage that you need to do. This fourth mistakes only applies if you're playing a Count the Odds build. If you're playing Greenskin, this one does not apply to you. So if you are playing Count the Odds, this is a mistake that I see so many players make. Even the API is wrong for these add-ons that everyone is so obsessed with that I use just for the cooldowns. It is wrong for the rotation. If you want to maximize your damage playing this build and you want to still use this add-on, you can follow it, but you will not maximize your damage output. And here is why. I'm going to show you what the API says I should do. Right here it says I should use my Fan the Hammer. I should use my pistol proc. This is incorrect, even though we're sitting on 6 bullets. We're playing CTO, and we have Vanish available, so we should be using Vanish to get more ambushes out to get more buffs. Only at this point now, I'm spending my procs. And then I'm using my Shadow Dance to re-enter Stealth Bar again to gain more procs. You need to prioritize using one of your ambush resetters when you're using CTO instead of your Fan the Hammer procs. 100% of the time. If you do this, you will end up getting 5 buff and 6 buff rolls so much more frequently, and you will be able to sustain your damage much longer and much better. This is a mistake that more outlaw rogues make than I'm willing to admit. A lot of people that I've coached have this very same issue. So if you make this mistake, here is how you fix it. This is what I see a lot of people do on their AoE opener. They come in, they ambush Between the Eyes, ambush again, Slice and Dice, and then they Blade Flurry. That is completely incorrect. What you need to be doing on your AoE opener, here I'm just going to charge my cooldowns back real quick. So this is something that I covered in my rotational guide, but I'm including it here because this is something that still people are doing wrong. This is your proper AoE opener. Adrenaline Rush into Roll the Bones. First button you press is Blade Flurry, then Ambush, Between the Eyes, Ambush again, and then you start spending your procs, get your Vanish going, and that is it. You need to use your Blade Flurry as your first button in AoE after Adrenaline Rush and Roll the Bones. That will make sure everything else that you press applies to every target that you're hitting. Otherwise, you're going to be doing single target for 4, 5, 6 globals, and you're losing a lot of group damage that way. The next mistake also has to do with people in AoE. So this is a pretty good spread here. We have 4 targets, and let's see what we're hitting when we are focusing this target that's all the way over here. But mind you, pretend this is an entire pack. So I'm hitting this target, and as you can see right now, my Blade Flurry is only hitting these 2 targets. Whereas if I walk over here, now I'm hitting 3 targets. So you need to make sure that you're in close enough proximity to all your targets with your Blade Flurry. So now I move 1 over, and I'm hitting all 4 targets with my Blade Flurry. A lot of people will just stay around here, and they're not hitting that 4th target. So you need to make sure you're maintaining close enough proximity during your Blade Flurry that you are actually hitting all the targets that are in the pack, or as many as possible. There will be times where you can't hit everything, but just by repositioning yourself, you're able to hit more targets. This is a bigger problem than a lot of people seem to realize. Between the Eyes is a massive, massive damage contributor to your overall. And the reason isn't because the damage from Between the Eyes is huge. As you can see, a 7-point finisher only does 18,000 damage, whereas a 7-point finisher for Dispatch, if I open up my book, does 25,000 damage. So a 7-point Dispatch will deal 25,000 damage. That's 7,000 damage more than 7-point blood Between the Eyes will. So what we want to be doing here is making sure that whenever we are on a target, we have Between the Eyes on it, and whenever we need to switch targets, we bank to Between the Eyes to switch targets as our first spender. So I'll demonstrate how to do that properly right now. So we're going into a pack, we're getting our Between the Eyes up on our main target. You can see I have a tracker on my nameplate there, and also on my Afnar UI. So let's say that I know that I need to target swap soon. I have 2 options. Am I going to reapply this Between the Eyes right now, or am I going to save it because I know I need to switch to this target over here? So I save my Between the Eyes, and just like that, I'm able to maintain that extra 20% crit chance. And if I need to switch back, I make sure that I get my Between the Eyes cooldown back first before I switch targets, so that way the first spender that I do on this new target is Between the Eyes. And just like that, you're able to make sure that you're always keeping that 20% crit damage, or crit chance, sorry, on the target that you're hitting, which will then make your Blade Flurry hit harder and will increase your overall DPS. So here's another very common mistake I see people make, and it is using the wrong spenders while in your Shadow Dance window. So in this demonstration, I'm not going to do the whole cycle like I showed earlier with Vanish, Shadow Dance, Vanish, because I want to demonstrate what the proper usage of your Shadow Dance is, or the proper spenders in your Shadow Dance. So what I see people do a lot of the time is they'll either use their Slice and Dice or Between the Eyes during Shadow Dance, and that's just wrong. Even if your Between the Eyes falls off, that is poor planning on your part. You need to make sure there's at least 6 seconds on Between the Eyes left on the target before you hit your Shadow Dance button. That way you can make use of the 20% crit while you're in your Shadow Dance. Also making use of the Night Stalker talent, which affects Shadow Dance, which makes your abilities deal 8% more damage while you're in that window. So if you're going into a pull here, this is what you need to be doing. You get your Between the Eyes up, you get your Vanish up, everything's being spent. You see I still have 13 seconds on my Between the Eyes here. That means that it is safe for me to hit my Shadow Dance, and I can just start plugging away with ambushes on this target, and I don't have to worry about my Between the Eyes falling off. And then after Shadow Dance, I can reapply my Between the Eyes. You'll notice the only spenders I'm pressing while in Shadow Dance are Dispatch. That is it. If your Between the Eyes falls off during Shadow Dance, that is poor planning on your part, and you need to make sure that preemptively, before you click your Shadow Dance, there's at least 6 seconds on it, because your Shadow Dance lasts 6 seconds. So you need to make sure you have enough between the eyes time on to last the entire duration of your Shadow Dance before you go into it. If you make the mistake, which does happen, I've made this mistake before too, if you go into Shadow Dance and there's only 2 seconds left on your between the eyes, you need to commit to using your ambushes and dispatches only if you're playing CTO. If you're playing CTO, you need to make sure you're only using ambushes and dispatch during your Shadow Dance window, otherwise you're losing out on a big part of what that talent node does for you. Okay, now we're getting to a little bit more of why you're dying in keys, and the reason is most likely because of either poor positioning or poor defensive uses. So let's see how I handle this electrical storm. As you can see right off the rip, I use my Crimson Vial and then my Feint to mitigate as much damage from this electrical storm as possible. If you look at the health bars, I was the only one other than the tank who stayed super healthy throughout that. That's because I used my defensives before the damage became critical to my health. You need to be using Feint preemptively, not when you're at sub 30%, sub 20% HP. You need to use your Feint in order to mitigate damage, not as a last minute, oh shit, I'm gonna die button. If you use it as a last minute button, the damage reduction that you're getting from Feint isn't gonna do anything for you. Same thing with Vial. You don't want to be using Vial when you're already almost dead. And again, right here, we're going to another electrical storm. Let's look how I handle with this one. So, I start taking some damage, I press my Feint button, and then afterwards I press my Vial button to try to stagger the defensives this time. So instead of trying to maintain top HP the entire time, I'm staggering my defensives to make sure that I always have something running through the entire, 8 or 9 seconds of the electrical storm. So that is another very good way to use your defensives. You don't always want to use Feint and Vial at the same time, but another way of doing it is just to stagger them. That way you always have something running, something to help out the healer. I also held Cloak for that electrical storm because I was waiting for our healer to call whether I need to Cloak or not. Cloak is not my cooldown at this point. Cloak is my healer cannot reach me and needs to focus on somebody else, therefore I will Cloak it. When you're playing in lower pug groups, on that first storm you can Cloak, and then 2 storms later you can also Cloak. I usually don't need to use Cloak on the first storm because the healer has every cooldown available, so that's just something that you need to look out for as well. Cloak can also be used offensively. You can see right here in a raid fight, he does the Erupting Bedrock ability, and I use Cloak to be able to stay in and stay on the boss in order to maintain doing damage the entire time. This is something that we have to use, and it's something that people just don't use. So you need to make use of your Cloak ability offensively if you want to maximize your damage. So this is in a raid setting, and I'll show you what it looks like in a dungeon setting as well. So this next clip is in a very first pull of a Temple of the Jade Serpent. You'll see I use my Cloak for both offensive usages and defensive usages all in one. So as we pull this guy, this Living Water Elemental, he does a crap ton of damage with Tainted Ripple and a Surging Deluge. The Surging Deluge will one-shot you, the Tainted Ripple puts a nasty dot on you and does big initial damage. You'll see right here, I hold my Cloak until I see the Swirly come out, and the Swirly is bigger than you think it is, so I use my Cloak to be able to, 1, live, and 2, be able to stay on all my targets during my boon. So you can do hybrid uses of your defensive ability to make sure that you're also able to maintain offensive capabilities at the same time. Okay, so the last issue that I really need to talk about is what Rogue CC is and how you're doing it wrong. There's a lot of people who think that Rogue CC is CC every single mob of the dungeon and, you're doing it all by yourself. But that's incorrect. Rogue CC is specially targeted for single target lockdown. We have all the tools to do that with our Kick, Kidney, Cheap Shot, Blind, Gouge if you talent into it. We can infinitely lock down a single target. So even without Gouge, I'm going to show you how we lock down a target, and then I'm going to get into the wrong way of doing it as well. So let's say that this training dummy is a caster. We're fighting it, and it finally starts doing a cast. So right there we kick. You can watch it on my tracker here. We kick the cast. And we're just continuing with our rotation as if we're trying to kill this guy. And then now let's say he's doing another cast. So we're going to kidney the next cast. And we're just going to continue our rotation. And then, oh, he's about to do another cast spell right here. So now that we delayed with our kidney, we're able to get our kick again. As you can see right there, I had my kick back up. And then on the next cast, I don't have a kick ready or anything. Let's say my kidney's not up either. I can use blind. Okay, now the blind right now, he's doing another cast. What you can do here is you can vanish and then cheap shot. So you can use all of these tools to single target lockdown anything that can be stunned. So what you're doing wrong is, let's say that this is a target that cannot be kicked. So it has an ability like the Haunting Shaws in Temple of Jade Serpent. They have the Scream, which is a kick, and they have the Haunting Gaze, which you can stun or blind. So what you need to do is, let's say he just used the Haunting Gaze and you missed the stun, which does a lot of damage to your tank, which is why it's important to stop it if you can. So let's say that we missed the stun. A lot of people, after the Haunting Gaze go up, they'll kidney anyways. And this kidney right here, while the Haunting Gaze is on cooldown, does nothing for anybody. Because now all you did was put him on a stun DR. So that's stun diminishing return, which means that the next stun that goes on him is going to be less duration. So you need to make sure that you're only stunning abilities. You're not stunning just for the sake of stunning. If you're stunning for the sake of stunning, you're losing damage, you're not doing anything productive for your team, and you're not stopping the abilities that actually need to be stopped. In fact, you're making it harder to stop those abilities, because if they've already been stunned twice, and then you stun the third time, by the time the fourth ability comes around, you can't stun it anymore. You can only stun a target up to 3 times within a certain set time period. So you need to make sure you have a blind up in that situation. But if you don't have blind up because it's a 2-minute cooldown and you already used it, you're just letting that ability go off, and now you could have a dead tank and a dead team. So you need to make sure you're rotating your CCs properly when you're dealing with casters, and you need to make sure that you're dealing with your stuns and blind properly when you're dealing with things that cannot be kicked, such as the Haunting Gaze from the Haunting Shaws, or from the minions in there as well that do the Dark Claw ability. So you need to make sure that you're not just wasting your stun for the sake of stunning. You need to prioritize your damage as much as you can whenever you are able to do damage, and then prioritize your CC during the cast of the ability. This also applies to the Scepters in Algathar Academy, for example. They have a kick on the Mystic Blast, but they have Arcane Rain, which is a stop, which means kidney, cheap shot, blind, or gouge. You need to use a kick on the Mystic Blast, and then you need to use your kidney during the Arcane Rain cast time. Not when the cast bar is finished, but during the cast time of it. That way you stop the ability from going off in the first place. If you use the kidney after the rain already started, and it's already on cooldown, all you're doing is stunning him while he's recharging his cooldowns. So it's very important that you learn to prioritize damage when you need to, and learn to stun things or blind things when that ability becomes available to use. That's it for the video, guys. These are the 10 most common mistakes I see Outlaw rogues making that are hurting your overall damage, utility, and survivability. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, put a comment down below, and I'll see you guys next time.